Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast, where I have meaningful conversations with creatives about their mental health journeys. Please note, I am not a licensed practitioner or therapist, but an actor and a filmmaker who is deeply interested in sharing my own struggles and exploring the mental health of others. My hope is that these conversations bring you some joy, some personal understanding, and some tools so that you can build your own mental health toolbox. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode, Season 5 of the More Than You See podcast. Today, we have an incredible actor and podcaster, Brittany Rizzo. Her podcast, My Only Friends, is also a mental health podcast where she talks to people about how pop culture and film and TV shows have influenced them and their mental health, which is pretty much exactly what I love to talk about as well. I mean, More Than You See was created out of this idea that we can have so many non-traditional resources that can help us through difficult times. And Brittany has basically created a podcast all about that. So I am so on board with what she does and her interviews, and I've listened to some episodes. They're really incredible. So I strongly encourage you to go and check her everything out. All of her links will be in the show notes. But as far as what we cover on this episode of the podcast, we cover a lot of really incredible things. We talk about women's reproductive rights. We talk about building a mental health toolbox. We talk about finding gratitude and support, as well as managing mental health as an actor. I mean, truly just managing your mental health as a person. Brittany really shares her own journey of self-discovery and the importance of being present and grounded in the face of challenges. And then we also discuss something very similar to what she talks about on the podcast, which is the impact of social media on mental health and finding inspiration in TV shows and fictional characters. She also finally opens up about her decision to join an outpatient program and the positive impact that it had on her life. Brittany is so open and honest with me and with the community, and I think that there's things that we have not talked about on this podcast yet, and that's why I'm so excited to bring you this episode. So, without further ado, here is my interview with Brittany Rizzo. Brittany, I'm so excited to have you here. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm a little tired, but I have a fun date night. My partner's best friend is in town from New York City, and we never get to see them, and so I'm really excited to go do that tonight. Have a little date night activity. But yeah, I don't know if you've listened to the podcast before, but I like to rewind for people and be like, hey, so you gave me your gut reaction or the reaction that you normally give people when someone asks how are you? But how are you actually doing? Check in with yourself.
I was just going to ask, are you tired or is something else going on? Because usually when I tell people I'm just tired, it's because I'm so depressed.
Oh, me? No, it's actually genuinely tired. I did actually have surgery last weekend, so I
just had surgery too.
Congratulations.
What did you have surgery on?
I will be talking about it in the podcast in the future, so I'm not going to give it up right now, but it was a women-related issue.
Well, I have endometriosis, so if that was...
That's not what it was, but it was something that has made me be like, my gosh, women's reproductive rights are so complicated. It is, it makes me so angry that people think, it already made me angry that people think that they should have control over women's bodies, period. But then having gone through what I've gone through for the last 2 months, I was like, holy fucking shit, everyone back off my body, because women are fucking magical and no one should have to tell them what they should be doing with their bodies.
Yeah. And we also think we're the only ones who are experiencing that pain. And then once you go through that, you're like, there are so many women in the world who feel this way. And it makes me so sad because think of all the things we could be doing if we weren't in pain.
Yep. 100%. And it's definitely, and the reason I said I was like, this is something I'm going to be sharing on the podcast is because it's actually a very big part of my life that I haven't shared yet on the podcast for various reasons. And so it's something that I'm planning on sharing next season or this season, which you're in the 5th season. So this season I'm going to be talking about it. And so there's going to be a whole episode around it. and one of the main reasons that I wanted to share it, even though it's going to be difficult, is because like women need to know that they are not alone in all of this crap.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how are you doing? How are you recovering?
Well, I just had surgery on my ankle. I was walking on a torn ligament for like 2 years, and it was just a matter of like, I can't take that much work off. And I didn't want to do it during the summertime because I didn't want to be in a hot apartment. And like, I live upstairs on the second floor with no elevator. But it's interesting because I had the people I had on my podcast before my surgery, I was talk about like, I think things are meant to find you when they're supposed to.
Yeah.
And I think that these guests came on like during the strike. I had more authors on, and it was all about like an abundance mindset and like how to prioritize your time and how to like create better habits. And I had all these people on right before I had the surgery, and like it helped me so incredibly much. And instead of looking at all the things I couldn't do because of my foot, I was like, oh my God, how amazing is this that like my neighbor is carrying me down the stairs. Like if you ask for help and you are kind, people will help you. And like,
it's the hardest thing to do.
It's so hard. Yeah. I don't know why. For me, it's never been hard. I was just telling you. I think maybe it's a little bit of laziness because I don't want to do things.
Hey, it's important to know that about yourself.
Yeah, like I'm ambitiously like lazy, and I think I'm always like, I don't know how to do this, will you help me? And like, it's a matter of like nobody telling me like, just learn how to do it for yourself. Like, I will find that in me to do, obviously, but I've just never been afraid to ask for help. And I would say maybe when I was younger, probably, but as I've gotten older, I'm like, you know what, I need help, and I can't shy away from this because what am I going to do? Do it alone? I can't do it alone.
Right.
And so having the surgery, as brutal as the recovery has been, like how painful it's been, and like it's frustrating because I'm like, I just want to get up and walk around. Like, I just want to go wipe the counter that like I see crumbs on the floor. I just want to go sweep them up. But I'm like, I can't. I have to get on my little scooter. But now I'm finally walking. So it's nice. But like, you know, I have a chair in my shower. Like, my living room, I look like a 90-year-old woman lives here.
Yep. Hey, it's good to like experience it now.
Yeah, and it was really just like a great time to focus on how lucky I am for the people in my life who have like reached out and helped me and like brought over care packages or brought me food, and you know, the family members who've reached out are my friends. And I, instead of looking at the lack of it all, I just looked at how lucky I am to have that, because there's not, you know, a lot of people don't have a really incredible support system. So I feel very lucky.
That's awesome. So you're like sitting in gratitude right now. Is that like your mental state?
Yes. I have to. I have to always practice gratitude, or else I will spiral.
Yeah.
Very badly.
Yeah. So like, I want to introduce you and talk about all of the things that you do. But first of all, I want to say that, so Brittany also has a mental health podcast, or a podcast that is related to mental health. It's called My Only Friends. And first of all, let me tell you that like Friends for me is the same as Friends is for you, as far as like, it is my go-to number one thing that I do when I am depressed or need any sort of comfort. Friends is my comfort food.
I have goosebumps. It makes me so happy.
Yeah. It's like, it's just, that's like my soul animal. So I just think that,
I'm like,
your podcast is really cool.
I'm so lame. I'm like, this makes me so happy. I love Friends so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's really cool.
So happy.
How did you start your podcast? Like, where did it come from?
Well, my friend Mickey had messaged me this TikTok. I always forget this guy's name, and I tell the story all the time, and I always forget this guy's name. It was like a motivational speaker. And he was saying like, I guarantee you there's somebody who watches 900 hours of Friends a day to go turn off their brain and to escape the world. But why not turn the thing that you use to escape as a thing that brings you more joy, and like monetize it and get it. And Mickey sent it to me. He was like, you need to do a Friends podcast. And I was like, okay. Like, I was like, okay. And then I literally like a week later, I started doing it. Yeah. And I just kind of like, I was driving home. I go back to Las Vegas a lot because my family is there. So I drive back all the time. And I was driving back from Vegas and I was like, it could be called My Only Friends podcast, because it feels like the cast of Friends are my only friends sometimes. Like my mental health gets so shaky that like, and if I don't watch Friends for a long time, I don't feel like myself. Like I feel very disconnected. And there's also something like very maternal about Jennifer Aniston to me, where I'm like, if she is on TV, I feel safe. And like, I mean, after my surgery, I got an infection. So I had a really bad fever. I was really sick. I was in a pain and I was crying hysterically. And my dad was here helping me. And in the middle of this panic attack, I said, turn on Friends. And it was gone. Because in my head, nothing bad can happen if I'm watching Friends.
Yeah.
There's just, you're not going to be like, there's just no way. Nothing bad is going to happen if I'm watching Friends. I feel safe.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not by myself anymore. So I basically took that feeling and was like, well, what is that for other people? And what show has helped them during a hard time, or what show helps them recenter themselves? And it's been really fun because like, even, you know, my best friend Sarah came on the podcast. She was my first episode as like a test go at it, and hers is Friends too, but for a completely different reason.
Interesting.
So, you know, it more so took her back to a better time per se, of like, you know, no stress and being younger and watching it with her family when her parents were together, you know, like stuff like that. So, and it is interesting, like what episodes she watched that like made her so happy, but they would give me like, I'm like, oh, I don't like when Rachel does that. Like, so it's really that. And like, I've had a lot of people come on and I've been introduced to shows I would have never watched before. Like David DeLuise from Wizards of Waverly Place came on, and his was Lord of the Rings, and I had never seen Lord of the Rings before. So I spent like 3 days in my apartment watching all of them. So, and I am the binge queen. Like when people say they don't really watch TV, I'm like, I don't know how to talk to you.
Well, especially if they're actors.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know how to talk to you. Like I love television.
Yeah. Well, it's so, you know, I think I've started my podcast for a very different but similar reason, in the fact that like I started More Than You See because I went through a really bad depressive, like suicidal ideation state when my ex-husband left me, and it was like completely out of the blue, did not expect it. It was a really, really, really shitty time. And one of the things that helped me during that time was walking my dog and hiking and listening to podcasts. And I specifically listened to this one episode with Zachary Levi, and he talked about how he like right before shooting Shazam was in a mental like house to help with suicide and to help stabilize your mental health. And he was talking about all of the different resources, all the different tools that they were giving him as far as like meditation and nutrition and like, you know, like brain psychology and like all this kind of stuff. And I was like, it's so wonderful, but it's so out of the realm of possibility for people to be able to go and spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in order to make themselves feel better.
Right.
And I was like, but it is so interesting that the focus at this place was on like non-traditional resources. Like it wasn't just focusing on medication, like just focusing on traditional talk therapy. It was like looking at all the other things that we need in order to make ourselves feel better. And I started talking to my friends about like, well, what makes you feel better when you're feeling shitty? And it was different for everyone. And I was like, this is so interesting and important to talk about. Yeah, like what is the thing that makes you feel better versus what makes me feel better. And so a lot of my actually early episodes, I also talk about different books, different songs, different podcasts, like whatever, because it truly is something where it's like you mentioned earlier, where it's like something that I will listen to and then be like, hey, like you should listen to this thing. And then the person's like, oh, I don't like to listen, but I like to read. Right. You know, like everyone processes information and their feelings in a lot of different ways. And I think that by providing these different opportunities for people to learn, they can like build their own mental health toolbox, which is like my goal is for, people to collect those things.
It's, first of all, I'm really sorry that you went through that, because it's just heartbreak like that. It's so painful, but like you also, and like you have to rebuild yourself back up again, and it's so hard, but it's also like so beautiful that you have that, like, it's courageous to like fight for yourself. And
yeah, thank you.
I went to a mental health facility in like 2019 maybe, right before COVID. And I was having a lot of health problems, and I got ghosted, and like kind of same situation, not my ex-husband, thank God, but it was just like a lot of things, and I had no self-worth anymore, and I just was like, I didn't want to die, but I knew I couldn't live the way I had been living anymore. And I called up my sister and I said, I need help. And she looked up all these different places, and I went 5 days a week for 5 hours a day. And it was, a lot of people who were there from all ranges, like 19 to 55, to men, to women, to, and it was like the most heartbroken I had ever been in my life, because I was like, how did I end up here? Yeah. But then it ended up being like the most beautiful time of my life, because nothing else mattered except getting myself back. And like, when you say like what helps other people, like that was another reason for doing the podcast, because for so long I literally was just telling my girlfriend this the other day. I'm like, whenever I go through a breakup, I always am like, I Google Jennifer Aniston. Like, how did Jennifer Aniston get over this? Like, if she can get over that, I can get over anything. And so that's like, I want people to see like, their favorite actor or writer or whoever on the podcast and be like, oh, I've always wanted to know how they got through this hard time, because I went through it and I had no clue. So I think, we go through things in our life so that we can help other people. Like our hardships are literally there for us to learn, and so that we can be of service for other people. Like that is just what I have taken on for everything that I've been through, because I'm like, well, then what's the reason? Just because? Like I didn't go through that just because,
Yeah, absolutely. Having a greater purpose is really valuable. It's like a really valuable way to help us through, and gratitude. Right. Like you mentioned before.
Yeah. Well, I had to get to the point, like when I entered that outpatient therapy, like it got to the point where I had to be like, I am grateful my hand works and that I can pick up this pen. I am grateful for this pen. Like it had to get so down to the quick of it all, because I was so out of touch with what I had in my life. I was so focused on everything I didn't, and like how painful things were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how did you handle COVID? Like coming out of that and then did you go through that by yourself?
COVID was a dream for me, if I'm being completely honest, because I had a lot of health problems, and I had gained about 75 pounds. And 2019, I was already hiding away. Like I was already like, I don't want anybody to see me. And that's where a lot of my self-worth went out the window, because I was like on all these wrongful medications, and my body was going berserk, and I had just gained so much weight, and I didn't even recognize myself, and I was already hiding away. So when the pandemic happened, I was like, well, great. Like now I don't have to see anybody at all. And now I don't have to feel like I'm missing out on anything, because nobody's doing anything.
Right.
And so I'm like, and it also like kind of forced me, like I journaled a lot, and I really focused inward, and like I went home and stayed with my parents and my dogs. So it for my mental health, it kind of just helped me stay on track and stay focused, if anything. And then I kind of, just really only cared about getting answers for my health. And then by the time COVID was over, it was like, oh, okay, like I can get back out in this world.
Yeah. So what kind of tools did you learn like from your outpatient program that like helped you just like find that self-worth and ground yourself again?
Oh God. I mean, we did a lot of music therapy was like my favorite, which is interesting because when I first got there, I didn't want to be there at all. Even though I had asked to be there, I was like, I fucking hate everything. And like, I was just full of so much anger. And we did this one exercise where the music therapist, it was like the first exercise I did there. He played this song and was like, for the next 3 minutes, write everything you're angry about. And just, even if you repeat it, even if it looks like chicken scratch, like just write it, get all that rage out. And the music is like blasting. It's like rock music, like angry metal or whatever. And then the music stopped and he's like, take a deep breath, fold your piece of paper. And he was like, now rip it up. And that is like one of my favorite exercises because it's so simple. But like, and there's also something very like getting your thoughts, like you can type them out, you can talk them out, but like writing them out, like your brain can't work as fast or your hand can't work as fast as your brain. So it forces you to slow down. It forces you to like get those thoughts to settle and like get out of you. So I learned like, that, and just, we did like a lot of behavioral therapy and grounding work, which was really amazing. And I even used it last night. It's like, just 5 things that are blue in my apartment. What can I find? Because I was like, oh my God, I'm having a panic attack right now. And so, and it was just a lot of like recognizing the parts of yourself that you're worthy, like that you have worth. And I think group therapy was also my favorite. Even though it can be a little, you're like, okay, I don't really know these people. And now I have to talk in front of all of them. But you get very inspired by other people when you're like, oh, well, they're going through that. Like, I can't imagine going through that. Like, this person's so brave. Like, I was always inspired by seeing the people there fighting for themselves. And it makes you want to fight for yourself more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like building a new foundation for yourself.
Yeah, I felt like in that time of my life, it kind of blew up into a million different puzzle pieces, and I just had to figure out how to put them back together in a picture that I liked. Yeah. Because the picture that it had been was not working anymore.
That's awesome. Yeah. Are you hyper aware of like triggers or different external factors that will then send you into spirals now?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, look, I don't do good in large groups of people. I'm like a 4 or 5 person max type of girl, or just a one-on-one. Like large groups I can't do. I think like I can tell when I start looking too hard outside of myself. Like, during that time and at my lowest points, it's always when I have put my worth in something else, whether it be my weight, my looks, relationship, a job. I placed all my worth outside of me. And when I start seeing myself focus on those things more, I have to kind of check in and go, okay, but who are you? And like, and I also have to tell myself, like, Brittany, you work so hard to build yourself up again. Like, your foundation is solid. Like, don't let somebody come and just blow it all out. Like, so I definitely I notice when I'm doing that more, and, I'm still in therapy, and I can definitely start to see like, oh, I'm doing that again. I'm looking outside of me for happiness or worth when that is not going to change anything. So yeah, I absolutely. Can definitely.
How do you, like mentioning that you like smaller groups, how did you find the willingness to like have a voice in such a public place like a podcast? Like it seems like it could be counterproductive, and that like you wouldn't want to share of yourself so much.
I kind of just do every podcast as if nobody's listening. Like, I mean, even right now, like, I'm just, when you're so engaged in a conversation and you're just present and one-on-one, I don't even remember what I've said in the past 30 minutes. Like
Yeah.
I just am like, I really want to hear what you have to say and I want to be thoughtful in my words. And I can't do that if I'm thinking about who is listening to this.
Right.
You know, like, of course I care about the listener and I want them to have, you know, a valuable experience listening to this. But I'm also like, I can't think of people sitting behind in their steering wheel listening to this, or else I'm not going to be as candid as I would hope to be and
Right.
helpful, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's still very admirable though. Like I want you to give yourself a pat on the back because like, because it is difficult. I think we're all trying to find our voice in
Mm-hmm.
various ways. And for you to have found a way to share of yourself like so succinctly is something that I think we all aspire to. So, yeah,
Thank
can
you.
pat yourself on the back
Thank
for sure.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely scary sometimes. But then I'm like, nah, whatever.
I'm gonna ask you some rapid fire questions. What is one small thing that brought you joy recently?
My puppies. They're
Oh, how many do you have?
not small things, that's for sure. I have two Cocker Spaniels. They're in Las Vegas, though.
That's so cute.
They
That
are
was
like the
like,
loves of my life. I threw them a little party just because.
yep. That's like TY Beanie Babies. The
Hmm.
Cocker Spaniel was always my favorite
What's
when I
her
was a
name?
kid.
Sparky? I think I still
Yes.
have it. Yeah.
Hmm.
I still
Yep.
have it. Yeah.
Are you a list maker or procrastinator?
List maker. I
Same.
have a list on my counter and it's literally
Hmm.
order of the day, Central Perk. That's what it is. And then I have one on
Amazing.
my phone. And then as I go through the day, I like take things off of it.
Yeah. What has been your favorite age so far?
32 now. Yeah.
Nice.
It's
Good
been
for
the
you.
best. Yeah.
Do you prefer social time or alone time?
That's hard. It depends. Like if I'm around somebody that I can be 100% myself around, I'll be with them all day. But it is, you know, when you are very busy and you're dealing with multiple different personalities of other people and energies, I love coming home, putting on Friends or Heart of Dixie and playing Candy Crush until I fall asleep alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heart of Dixie is another one of my favorites.
Oh my God.
I
You have to come on my podcast because we are
I would
like
love
TV
to.
soulmates.
What is your go-to karaoke song?
That is such a good one. God, I love karaoke. Ugh. Recently, I've been singing Don't Know Why by Nora Jones a lot.
Nice.
That or Crush. Do you remember that song? It's
Hmm.
just a little crush.
Oh
That song.
yeah.
I love. I love all old 90s stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Final question. What is the kindest thing someone has done for you lately?
Oh, I mean, after my surgery, my neighbor and like anytime I couldn't walk down the stairs, like my neighbor would come up like and carry me down the stairs. And then when I just drove back from Vegas after Thanksgiving, I was able to go up the stairs on my own finally, and he got everything out of my car for me. Like my suitcase, all of my travel stuff, and like unpacked for me. And so that's just like I said, when you ask for help and you can really count on people, it just like makes life a lot like you're like, oh, okay, like there is good in the world and people
Yeah.
are really nice and people do love you and they care about you, and if you ask for help they will, like
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 they will.
So you're an actor as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So how has that like influenced your life as far as like your emotions and your mental health and like portraying characters? Like how does that work for you?
I mean, I look at Friends, right, and I think
Hmm.
of all that show has helped me through, and I just am like, I want to be that for somebody. I
Hmm.
want somebody to be like, well, Brittany Rizzo's on screen, so I feel safe. Like
Hmm.
that. Imagine, like I could only imagine Jennifer Aniston hearing that about something, and like, how rewarding is that? Like, how
Hmm.
fulfilling is that? Like, you know, I think I just really, well, I know that I just really want to inspire people to like be themselves and have a good time and like put goodness out into the world. And, you know, it's hard because acting, you do place a lot of your worth in other people's hands when you're auditioning. And I just learned, I've gotten to this level of thinking of like, you know what, if it's not for me, then it's not for me. And like, I don't want anything that's not meant for me, because what good will that do to like pretend to be something I'm not, or pretend to love something I don't? Like, if something is really meant for you, it will be. So yeah, what was the question?
Well, it's all, I mean, I'll take what you just said and then also add, like, if you're having a bad mental health day and like you're gonna have to go to set, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you, because I think like one of the reasons why, like you mentioned as well, that like I love this podcast is because I want the listeners to see themselves in the guests and to learn from the guests and be like, oh yeah, like that's a great idea. When I feel shitty, I also want to do that thing.
Yeah.
So when you feel shitty and you still have to go to work, because we have those days, what do you do?
I think one, it's okay to be honest with people and say like, hey guys, I am having a really hard time right now and I'm going to try my best, but like, just know it's not personal. If I seem like quiet or anything, like if I can't look at you without crying, like that's why. And also like taking it outside of yourself, putting the focus on the present moment. Like you have to, especially like if you're an actor and you're showing up to work, like there's a lot of people there who are counting on you, you know?
Right.
So it's time to get outside of yourself, get into the present moment, and be of service to other people and like really connect with the person that you're in the scene with, or you're in the trailer with, or, you know, in hair and makeup with. Like it's hard, but you have to just, I think you just have to be completely honest and like show up for yourself, and then you can show up for others. So, you know, I remember there was a short film I did where I was like having so much anxiety on set, and I was just like, it was like 3 a.m, and I was just like, I need to go. I just want to go. And then I was like, Brittany, you are literally on set right now, getting paid to do something you love. Calm down. Like nothing else matters. And I just think I'm just very big on focusing on the present moment and like what you can control.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really valuable. I know that your like side job is that you work at a salon. Is that right? So how does that work for you? Like how, when you're you know, because again, like we as actors have so many times where like our fate is in other people's hands, and like you can get bad news at any time, you know, like there's just, it constantly feels like external factors are influencing how our day is going. Do you do that? Does that carry over to your salon work as well, where you're like, I'm having a shitty day?
Absolutely. Because the clients that I've, you know, had, I've been there for like 3 years. So but also it's just a matter of being like, how are you? And asking somebody else how they are. Like there are so many times where I'm like, I'm at work and I'm like, I don't want to be here. Like, or I didn't sleep the night before, and I'm just like, how are you? How is your day going? And then back to the gratitude thing of like, and being present of just, I'll be like, I could feel the water on my hands. Now I'm washing her hair. Now I could feel the suds on my fingers. Like breaking everything down to stay so grounded in reality, because nothing else that's going on up here, they're all thoughts that they like, you know. And I had a sponsor who would say like, you're not responsible for the first thought, but you are for the second. So it's like, if I have that first thought, not my fault. If I add to it, it's my fault. But I can sit there and go, you know what? Is that true? No, that's not true. Or can I control that right now? Is there anything I can do about this right now? No. So get back to what's right in front of you. And like, it just makes your life more, I don't know, fulfilling.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And, you know, echoes like the importance of staying in the present moment. You know, something that my partner will always do is he'll be like, yeah, like this is the problem you can worry about later. Like this is like whatever anxious spiral you're about to go on, like that's something you can't actually deal with right now. So like postpone that anxiety
and
for
also,
6 p.m. tonight.
yeah, and just like realizing like I've gone through it before, I'll get through it again.
Yeah.
Like the universe has never failed me. I have never failed me. I've always fought for myself. So like, and like, I just want to inspire people to do that. Like, you are worth fighting for. I did not think I was worth fighting for a very long time. And I will look in the mirror and have conversations with myself. Like when you look in the, when you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't even look like a real person anymore. Like you're like, wait, is that me? It sounds so stupid, but you know what I mean? Like when you start looking at yourself for so long in the mirror, because I saw somebody else, like they were like, look in the mirror for as long as you possibly can. And when you're ready, say, I love you to yourself. And I find that that is so important to do because for so long, I couldn't look at myself and say that. And now I can appreciate everything that I've been through and like remind myself of like, Brittany, you have fought so hard. Remind yourself of like where you've come from and what you had to go through to get to where you are now and be grateful for it. Like, or else life is just too hard.
Yeah, for sure. Would you be willing to share a little bit more about what had you decide to go into the outpatient program? Like what you were struggling with? And
it was more so, I think I had dealt with a lot in my 20s, like narcissistic abuse. And I had finally just kind of been like, okay, why do I keep falling for the same pattern? What is it in me that keeps falling for the same pattern?
Right.
And then I had also been getting tested for Cushing's disease, which ended up being like just a complete shit show of my life. I was put on a really, really high level of progesterone by one doctor to help my endometriosis. Well, the high level of progesterone basically made my body think it was pregnant for like 5 years and started mimicking Cushing's disease. So, and I didn't know that, of course, when I had this like mental breakdown. I just thought like, oh my God, I have this disease and my whole life has changed.
Right.
And then a female doctor, of course, helped me. And so I just remember I was like I was having a really bad anxiety attack and I was trying to just like calm myself down in the bathtub. And then I just felt like, oh my God, I need out. Like whatever this body is, I need out of it. I can't deal with this right now. And that's when I just knew. I'm like, I am waking up every day. Like I only want to be alive for my family, for my dogs, for my friends. I don't want to be alive for me anymore. And that's when I knew. I was like, I can't, that's not a way to live. Like I want to live for me. I want to be happy. I deserve to be happy.
Yeah.
And it took me feeling like I had absolutely nothing anymore to, get to that point to be like, okay, I need help. And it does get better. Like you always hear people say that and you're like, there's no way. There's literally no way. But I look at that point in my life to where I am now and my dogs are 15. I now have a nephew who just turned 3. Like I have my own apartment. I have a steady job. I am back to auditioning. Like I have a podcast. These are all things that like I didn't have during that time, but I also didn't think I was worthy of having any of them. And when you realize your worth, more things that are amazing and worthy of you come into your life. And so, had I given up 5 years ago, I would have never had all this amazing stuff and all the incredible memories of the last 5 years. And that's like very, gosh, talk about thinking like nobody's listening to this.
Sobering thing.
Like, woof. Yeah. But I mean, that's the truth of it all. That's the truth of it all. And I think a lot of people, more so than people think, are going through that.
Yes.
Of feeling that way. And especially like, you think you see these celebrities on TV or movies and this and that, and you think, well, what can they be so upset about? They've got everything. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Nothing on the outside is going to make you happy. Nothing.
Yep. I think it's so valuable what you just said about the importance of living for yourself, but also understanding that like at points when you're at your lowest, that is potentially not where you're at. And I think that the thing that's the most difficult, I talked with my therapist for a while about suicide when I was like really coming out of it. And, you know, something that she mentioned multiple times, because then also when I was starting the podcast, I was like, I'm concerned about potentially saying something that would trigger someone else, or that would give someone ideas or whatever. And she was very comforting in that, where she said, you know, like 90% of people have suicidal ideations at some point in their life. And people who actually die by suicide, like there's nothing that you or anyone else could have said or done in order to curb that. Like there's like when that final step happens, like there's so many people, like basically what her point was like so many people go through their days where they're feeling just completely worthless and pointless.
Yeah.
And there's really actually a very small percentage of those people who actually die by suicide, which of course is like, you know, a mental illness in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that number one, it's super valuable to recognize that like if you're at the point where you're living for someone else, that is still valuable because it's showing that you still have a desire to live, period. But absolutely, we all need to be living for ourselves. And I think that that's something that we forget because it's freaking hard. Like, that's the hardest, to live for ourselves. And to live authentically for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's hard. And like, you know, I've lost a handful of friends to suicide, and you just have to, you know, it's very like, you can definitely go down a bad path thinking like, what could I have done?
Yep.
And you just, you know, from your own experience, or maybe not, but I know my experience, like you're just not in your right mind when you're feeling that way.
Yes.
Agreed. Like it's almost like something else is taking over your brain that you cannot get rid of.
Right.
And there are plenty of times where I was just like, I don't know who else to talk to. And like calling a hotline, nothing to be ashamed of.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it definitely, you know, it's a heavy topic, and it still like makes me like a little, like my voice gets a little shaky talking about it, but it definitely, especially, I don't know if it's like more so our generation is just more open to talking about it than the older generations, but because I feel like I didn't know a whole lot about it when I was younger, and I was 13 when my first friend committed suicide.
Yeah, I was about the same. I was about, I think, 15. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just like, and even then nobody knew. Nobody had the tools. Nobody knew what to say to us like children. Yeah. And it, you know, I just am very grateful that there's more talks about mental health and you know, the darkest parts of it, because nobody should feel alone. Nobody should ever feel like they can't ask for help. And you know, I'm the type of person where I'm like, I'm probably awake. Call me. Like, go for it. Call me. I don't care. I will answer the phone.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's very, you know, that's very relevant what you were saying, but I also think the fact that like we're so inundated by other people's lives all the time. And so that certainly, I think, has just made it worse. Like certainly the mental health of everyone has just gotten worse the more that we are inundated with social media and everyone else in the world. And I think that actually that's why things like Friends are so valuable, because it's like, okay, I am going to escape into someone else's life, like with social media, but I know that it's going to be safe.
Right.
Like I know that it's not going to be something that you're like comparing yourself to, because you know that it is a fake world in some sense, you know?
Also, I mean, 90% of the time, nothing good is happening to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's all really uncomfortable, like miscommunications and like, you know, being stuck on a bad date or having a bad day at work, or, you know, there's so many examples of like how it's not because everything's going well for them that it's an amazing show, but it's how they show that like, yeah, it's not going great for them, but they're handling it and they
Mm-hmm.
come out at the end and everything ends up being okay. So
Right.
it's like, well, yeah, I want to see that portrayed on screen because then it makes me feel like, oh yeah, then I can go through that too and I'll be okay. Like, who cares? And there's so many times I'm at work, I'm like, well, if Rachel Green could get through it, oh well, like so can I. Like Rachel Green hated her job for years and then she became, this big wig at Ralph Lauren. So like, who cares? I can do it too.
One of my final questions, like for my long form interview, is I always like to ask people, like, what mask are you still wearing? Like, what is something that you're still struggling through that you tend to hide from others?
Gosh, I think it's like the need for validation, honestly.
Mm,
Like from people who don't matter almost. Like I need to prove myself to them. I prove myself to myself. I prove it to everybody else. Like I need this person to recognize that in me. And it's like, why? Like,
yeah.
why do I care what that one person thinks? And if they don't approve of me or they're not impressed by me, but all these other people who love me are like, no, like you're amazing, Brittany. Like we
Mm-hmm.
love you for you. Like who gives a shit about that one person not giving you the attention?
Right.
So it's kind of it's stuff like that. It's validation, but I definitely have gotten astronomically better with it. Like, and it's like social media, like the validation that we want to get from it so badly. Like even with the podcast or my own page, it's like, do people not care about me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we put so much of our worth in things that are outside of us. So
Yep.
while I would say I'm like 80-20 on that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I used to be in like 20-80.
Yeah.
So I definitely have come a long way in that, but it's still that need to have everybody know who I am now and like the validation from strangers and like caring what
Mm-hmm.
people think. Like and that's why I say like I can't do these things and think about anybody listening to it because I will care way too much.
Right.
It's like a weird like insecurity but people pleasing and I'm like I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do it. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely hard. It's hard
Yeah.
to
Well,
work on
definitely, I
stuff
think
like
just
that.
like the focus on your purpose and like,
Mhm.
focus on just like doing what you can to share your voice, share your experience,
Mhm.
and just knowing that that will potentially help someone in the future in some capacity, I think is like all that I can focus on sometimes,
Right.
you know?
Exactly. I'm like, if I inspire one person, then I'm
Hmm.
okay. And
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful like I just had a whole conversation with one of my really close girlfriends about like wanting to give up on the acting industry. And I
Hmm.
like really sat down and talked with her. And she was like, well, you inspired me. And when hearing somebody say that, I was like, oh, whoa. Like that
Yeah.
is beautiful feeling. I don't need to do that for hundreds of thousands of people. Would it be
Hmm.
incredible? Cool. Yeah, of course. Like everybody wants to help a ton of people.
Right.
But when the people close to you are like, you inspired me, or like, you really helped me through this, like, you're like, oh my God, that is like the most beautiful feeling in the world to like really
Yeah.
help somebody.
How are you feeling with the acting industry right now and post strike and
I'm excited. I think, it was a bummer because I have spent like 10 years out here and I was just getting the auditions I had always dreamed of, for shows on Apple and Amazon and this and that with like Julia Roberts and Brie Larson, like all these incredible Oscar winning females. And I worked so hard to finally get to that moment where I wasn't
hmm.
auditioning for, how it is. But
Yeah. Hmm.
but it was like, oh yes, these like meaty good parts. And then the strike happened and it kind of
Right.
felt like I had built up all this momentum just to kind of go right into a wall. And I felt like I know that this is affecting everybody, but God, like why do I feel like I'm not ever going to be happy? Like I don't get a chance to be happy. I'm finally like every time it kind of felt like this weird time in my life. Like every time I got momentum and I was doing well, like it was like this roadblock came. And then I was like, you know what, Brittany, this is not about you. And also
Right.
like things are going to get, rectified so that when you do book something, you're going to be protected and it's going to be
Right.
amazing. And you're not going to have to, oh, I booked something, but I can't even go to set now because of the strike, or it got
Right.
pulled because of the strike. I got canceled because of the strike. Like if I had to deal with that kind of disappointment, I probably would have spiraled a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
being that much closer to it and not getting
Right.
to fulfill it But now I'm like, I'm excited. I'm like, let's go.
Mhm.
Because like I
Yeah.
said before, anything that's meant for you, it will not miss you. And if it's for you, like it's already yours. I'm really big into manifesting and the power of your words. And so I just have, I know that next year is going to be fun and it's going to be busy and I'm going to learn a lot and I'm excited.
Mhm. Well, that's, like, all we can do
Yeah.
is really, like, focus on the joy
Mhm.
of the journey because everything else doesn't really matter at the
Right.
end.
And remembering, like you said, why you started it, like between the
Right.
podcast and acting, like, why did you start this? Because you thought it would be fun,
Mhm.
because something about it ignited a spark in you that made you want to, like, really, like, give you this big burst of energy and determination. And it's like, well, get back to that.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be so serious and so like, your life isn't depending on getting that part. Have fun in the audition. Have fun. Be excited that you even got the audition. Like
Yeah.
that's how I've gotten now, where I'm like, I'm just pumped that I get to, read these lines. Like if
Right.
I book it, that's a bonus. But like if you would have told 10-year-old Brittany she would be auditioning for XYZ, her little brain would have exploded. So like
Mhm.
honor that moment and enjoy it.
Right. Right. No, I think that's really valuable one thing that someone that I work with always reminds me is she's like, don't look at things as far as like where you're going to be in a year. She's like you, nothing could change in a year, but everything can change in 3. And so it's
Mhm.
like it's not about looking at these, tiny little things. It's about like just how you're continuing to build your career or build your life in whatever way and how much it can change. And I know for me, certainly like how my life has changed in 2 years is transformational.
Mhm.
I met my partner, we just celebrated our 2-year dating anniversary, and, like, before dating him, I mean, that was, when I was going through multiple rounds of depression and everything with my ex-husband, and then,
Mhm.
finally meeting him, and now I have his 2 kids, and, I mean, my life is completely different in 2
Right.
years, and it just shows the power of how much your life can change and how it's also important to just like live in the moment and be appreciative of what you have right now because
Yeah.
man, I would love lots of extra time to watch Friends, but now I have 2 children to help take care of,
Oh
so,
my goodness. Yeah, yeah,
it's
and
a
it's about
blessing
being fluid in
for
what
sure.
we can ask for something and it might not be the way we expected to get it, but we got it somehow. Like you just have to be open to what the universe is going to give you and
Yeah,
like not so dead set on what it's going to look like. Just know that it's going to happen. You don't know when, and you don't know how, but just have faith that it will and like
yeah,
trust that it's always going to work out for yourself because it always has before.
yep, yeah, absolutely. Well,
Mhm.
thank you so much, Brittany. It was really, really wonderful to chat with you.
Thank you. I'm so happy we finally got to do this. And I'm
Yeah,
literally going to be emailing you so you could come on the
great.
podcast because I would
Yeah,
love to have you on.
thank you again so much for joining me for another episode of the More Than You See podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I know that number one, I want to watch Friends again because we talk about Friends and about the importance of television and having those warm and fuzzy characters that kind of bring us some joy. And Friends, for me, is certainly one of those shows that consistently makes me laugh and consistently makes me feel less alone. Like that is a show that I've watched so many times during breakups and dark times, and so I feel like I need to go and watch it again. Anyways, please let me know what you thought about the episode, what you thought about Brittany. Spreading these episodes through word of mouth really, really does help. And my goal is to continue to grow and expand this wonderful community. I want to give a special shout out to my amazing editor and friend, Keidra Parkman, and the composer of the intro and outro music, Ryan Ricks, from Salt and Sea Studios. I hope that everyone is kind to themselves. I hope everyone remembers that you and everyone around you is more than you see. Thank you so much for joining me again today on this episode of the podcast, and I will see you again very soon.